So we got some unfortunate news coming out for the Las Vegas Raiders. This dropped earlier this morning. Matthew Stafford has officially restructured his contract and has basically been extended by the Los Angeles Rams, which means the Raiders and Matthew Stafford is not happening, which does suck if you're a Las Vegas Raiders fan. There was a real chance that the Raiders were going to be able to bring in Matthew Stafford. And there was a real chance the Raiders could have went all in. As Pete Carroll had described, they could have went all in on potentially bringing in that quarterback and try to win a Super Bowl. And I think Matthew Stafford would have been a very, very good option for the Raiders. But of course, the reports is that the Raiders only offered him a 2-year contract, and that wasn't going to be good enough for Stafford. Plus, the Rams also wanted pick 6, and the Raiders did not want to give that up. And I don't blame the Las Vegas Raiders at all at that point, right? It's one thing to pay a quarterback $50 million, which is already a lot of money. And then it's a completely different scenario giving up the 6th overall pick. The Raiders are in a better spot without Stafford keeping that 6th overall pick. Of course, I would have loved to be able to bring in Matthew Stafford, but the Raiders will now pivot, right? We'll look forward to bringing in one of these other quarterbacks that are available at this point, right? Adam Schefter put it out there. He said the following: with Matthew Stafford remaining with the Rams, the Las Vegas Raiders are now expected to investigate veteran quarterback options that include Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and Sam Darnold per sources. So as you guys know, right, and I know some people are going to say, hey, why are we going after a veteran quarterback? Go get that rookie quarterback. We do have to realize the rookie quarterbacks in this class are not good. There's one quarterback worthy of a first-round pick. That's Cam Ward. Outside of that, you're basically just gambling with that pick, and you don't want to gamble with the 6th overall pick. You can get one of the best edge players in, potentially in the NFL over the next 15 years with that 6th overall pick. You might be able to get one of the most explosive running backs or wide receivers over the next 10 to 15 years with that 6th overall pick. To take a quarterback that is and this isn't like, hey, let's take Bo Nix, right? This is not, hey, let's take Michael Penix Jr. This is a real gamble, right? And it doesn't make sense for the Raiders to go down that path at this point. I think next year class is also a lot better. You got Garrett Nussmeier coming out. Drew Aller has looked really, really good. And that doesn't include some of the guys, last year was Jaden Daniels. This year was Cam Ward. It doesn't include some of the guys that will end up, kind of becoming like a top 5 potential pick in next year's class. Or the guy that kind of comes out of nowhere. For the Raiders, the smartest thing they could do at this point is go down that veteran quarterback option. Obviously, Matthew Stafford would have been the guy that kind of gets you, instantly as a team that can compete for a Super Bowl. But now we'll have to go down one of these other routes. Now, I'll be the first to tell you guys, I don't personally want Russell Wilson. And I personally am not sold on Justin Fields either. I feel it's between Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Russell Wilson will be a little bit more consistent and you'll have more success with him, like on an average basis. Justin Fields is like boom or bust, right? Justin Fields, Chip Kelly may just click and you might have the next Sam Darnold situation. With Russell Wilson, I also don't think he's going to be able to win playoff games for you. I think he'll be good enough in the regular season, but when the playoff comes, I just don't have any faith in Russell Wilson. Justin Fields, I think, will end up busting out as well. Obviously, you have that potential boom to kind of factor in with Justin Fields as well. You never know if if it kind of clicks for him. Sam Darnold will be the other interesting option. Now, the thing with Sam Darnold is different than Russell Wilson's. He's different than Justin Fields. He's different even than someone like Aaron Rodgers. Where with a guy like Sam Darnold, that's a long-term commitment. And I'm just not sure if the Raiders are, in a position where you want to commit to that type of quarterback long-term. Not saying Sam Darnold is a bad quarterback because he had a really, really good year this past year. And we don't really know what he can develop into. I think he's like 26, 27 years old. So in 4 or 5 years, what if he is a top 5 quarterback? We don't know, right? And I don't want to write that off, but I also don't want to be the one to kind of pay that and to kind of bet on that, because if it doesn't work out, similar to what happened with the Atlanta Falcons last year, I don't want to be, 3 years stuck with the quarterback because we've guaranteed him money. You look at the Cleveland Browns, they owe Deshaun Watson $50 million on average over the next 2 to 3 years. That sucks for the Cleveland Browns. There's absolutely nothing they can do at this point. They have to roll forward with Deshaun Watson. And going with Sam Darnold as your quarterback, that would be the commitment you're kind of making. If I'm the Las Vegas Raiders, I think Sam Darnold would probably be the last option for me. Now, of course, if you think Sam Darnold long-term is going to be a playoff caliber quarterback, which Pete Carroll was able to have success with Geno Smith, and they were pretty good with Geno Smith. They had some consistency. They made the playoffs a couple of times as well. I'd be okay with Sam Darnold at that point as well, but I'm just not sure if I have the type of faith I have in these guys that I would have had with Matthew Stafford. And truth be told, I'd much rather go all in with Aaron Rodgers for the next 2 years than I would with any of these other quarterbacks. I think Aaron Rodgers is better than Russell Wilson. I think he's better than Justin Fields. And Sam Darnold, Aaron Rodgers better than him right now. You make the argument the other way around if you wanted to, because Rodgers is kind of on the decline. But the thing with Sam Darnold, again, it's a long-term commitment. Aaron Rodgers is not. And if you go with Aaron Rodgers and let's say it doesn't work out and you suck this year, well, then you just get a quarterback in next year's class anyways, right? And I think for the Raiders, that makes the most sense. It just makes the most sense to try to get Aaron Rodgers. Now, of course, there's already reports out there that are saying that Aaron Rodgers is most likely headed to the New York Giants. Obviously, that would make sense for him as well because last year he was with the New York Jets. It's really not that much of a move for him to go from the Jets to the Giants. That would probably make the most sense for Aaron Rodgers. Also, there's some character issues with Rodgers. That might not work well with Pete Carroll. So, I don't know at this point, right? But it does suck if you're the Las Vegas Raiders because Matthew Stafford would have been a really, really solid option if you were able to kind of bring him in. Outside of Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, Sam Darnold, some people have said Zach Wilson's another potential quarterback for the Raiders. I don't agree with Zach Wilson at all. At least Sam Darnold's shown that he's a good quarterback for 1 year. Zach Wilson hasn't even shown us that. And don't get me wrong, right? I'll be the first to tell you guys, if Zach Wilson has any sort of upside in his tape, right? If even a little bit of him being an actual good quarterback in the NFL, he would have kind of flashed that at some point. Like Sam Darnold has flashed in the past that he was a good quarterback. He just wasn't consistent. And, maybe Zach Wilson's a good option. I don't know, right? It would be cheap. You might be able to get him in that Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold type of, mold. But if you're going to go in with Zach Wilson, you might as well bring in Zach Wilson, Justin Fields, Joshua Dobbs, and every other backup quarterback you have and see if any of them can kind of win that job at that point, right? It really is unfortunate for the Raiders, but the good thing that we do have as we kind of go forward is, we already have 2 quarterbacks on this roster. Free agency still technically approaching, so Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Sam Darnold, all are still all options, right? Although we struck out on bringing in Matthew Stafford, the season doesn't start in 2 weeks. We literally have many, many, many months to get this position right. And I would make the argument the Raiders are doing things the right way, right? You don't want to go all in on a bad quarterback. You want to bring in a good quarterback, right? And I think the fact that the Raiders were interested in Ben Johnson, the fact they're interested in Matthew Stafford, to me, that's a positive sign that we're headed in the right direction. And someone said something in a comment a couple days back. They said, I hate the fact that we're only speaking to these guys and we haven't been able to actually sign them, right? What is the use of Tom Brady if we're only speaking to these guys and not able to bring them in? I want you guys to remember, if you don't speak to these guys, you're never bringing them in anyways, right? There's never been a guy that, a team doesn't speak to and then that guy comes over to that team anyways, right? In order to bring in Ben Johnson, in order to bring in Matthew Stafford, you have to talk to these guys. So although the Raiders did strike out with both Ben Johnson and Matthew Stafford, the fact that Tom Brady is at least trying to help the Raiders get into a position of winning, at some point over the next year, the Raiders will get into that spot, but we have to make every single decision properly. You can't pay Sam Darnold $300 million guaranteed for the next 5 years if you're not 100% sold on him that he's the long-term future, because what if he's not good and you have the 4th overall pick next year and you can land Garrett Nussmeier or you can land Drew Aller or one of these other quarterbacks coming out next year? What if you can land one of these guys, but the fact that you're investing in Sam Darnold, now you can't kind of make that decision, right? Even the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? They've kind of been going through this where they're not going all in on a quarterback, right? They tried Kenny Pickett, didn't work out. They brought in a couple different quarterbacks, Russell Wilson, Justin Fields. They went with a couple other quarterbacks as well over the last couple of years. Hasn't worked out, but I think just kind of going with that strategy is the right way because at some point you're going to get that quarterback. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers landed Tom Brady, in the final 3-4 years of his career. They won a Super Bowl out of that. The Broncos landed Peyton Manning. They won a Super Bowl out of that. So I think for the Raiders, just kind of continue down this path. We'll see what ends up happening. Uh, we got another very, very, very interesting report, and this one was kind of shocking to me to see, but apparently the Las Vegas Raiders are shopping Michael Mayer and Zamir White. Zamir White, don't really care about, but Michael Mayer is kind of an interesting report that's coming out. Now, this came out by Tashawn Reed and Vic Tafur, who work for The Athletic. I wouldn't think that they're going to just make this up, right? But to me, it's just pretty crazy to hear that the Las Vegas Raiders are apparently shopping Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer hasn't really been that good over the last 2 years. Even in his first year, he really wasn't that good. And then last year, the Raiders basically replaced him when they brought in Brock Bowers. But we were told that, hey, we're going to utilize this 12 personnel. We're going to put both of these guys in on the field at the same time. And they played a lot, right? But one of the things we did see was when Brock Bowers was like that true inline tight end and you came out in the 11 personnel, for example, right, one running back, one tight end, Michael Mayer was off to the sideline, right? Another thing is Michael Mayer didn't play for the first half of the season, so I don't know if that kind of impacted that second season. But the fact that the Raiders are trying to trade Michael Mayer, if you guys remember, we traded up for this guy, right? And I didn't really agree with the pick when the Raiders made the pick for Michael Mayer. To me, tight ends don't really change the game all that much. Obviously, Brock Bowers is different, understandable. But generally speaking, there are a lot of other guys we could have drafted, and Dave Ziegler, Josh McDaniels were like, Michael Mayer's the guy. That's the guy that we want, right? And I think he was even the third tight end taken in that class, right? So it wasn't like he was the first tight end to come off the board. But apparently, Tashawn Reed and Vic Tafur are saying that there are, teams that still might be interested in the potential. He has 2 years left on his rookie contract. So a team might be willing to give you, a 4th, 5th round pick. Best case scenario, maybe to give you a 3rd round pick, right, for Michael Mayer. Maybe it's a team that really needs a tight end. But I'll be the first to tell you guys, Michael Mayer hasn't really shown much, right? Like, he's not a guy that I would say is like a true separator. He's not a guy that can, get the ball in his hands and make people miss. And maybe he hasn't had the opportunity to kind of show us that he can do that. But he hasn't really flashed anything to me, right? And I watch tape. Like, I'll watch plays where Michael Mayer is not throwing the ball, but he's running a route. And his routes just aren't that good. They're not that crisp. He doesn't create that separation. Yeah, you can throw a 50-50 ball to him, and he's bigger than a lot of people, so he can probably make those catches. But it is unfortunate, man. The Raiders are apparently shopping Michael Mayer. Now, the best case scenario for me is the Raiders keep Michael Mayer, right? I know, I know it's not perfect, and I know in 2 years we might lose Michael Mayer. He might end up leaving anyways. But he still was a pretty good blocker this past season, and he's definitely still a threat out there. I think if he has a full offseason where he's healthy, he doesn't have the issue that he had this past season, right? I don't know if the actual what it was that happened to him actually was put out there, but from what I understand, it had to do with the family situation. Given he doesn't have any of that kind of happen and he has a full season, maybe Michael Mayer puts up 500-600 yards for the Raiders, and maybe he's a threat and he helps kind of open things up for Brock Bowers. Maybe he does a good job of blocking. Plus, you can never really predict injuries, right? If the Raiders lose a wide receiver, maybe you have to move Brock Bowers to that wide receiver spot, and you put Michael Mayer as the starting tight end. Vice versa, Brock Bowers misses 2 or 3 games. You can always have Michael Mayer, and I think it's still a good option. Plus, the draft pick is always more valuable than the actual player. Like, we're never getting the 33rd pick or whatever it was that we took for Michael Mayer. We're never getting that value back, right? We already took that player. I think the Raiders should stick with Michael Mayer. It doesn't make sense to trade him at this point. But if you are going to trade him, I would hope you can get a 3rd round pick. I don't think that would actually happen because he is already 2 years removed off the rookie contract, and he hasn't really looked that good, right? But it is unfortunate. The Raiders are in this also in this position where John Spytek is not going to agree with every person on this roster, right? He understands that some guys have value. Some guys would have to be full out, just released, right? Gardner Minshew might have to just straight up get released. We might not be able to bring back Trayvon Merrick or Malcolm Koonce, as opposed to if John Spytek was here last year, he might have traded them early, right? 1 year early, he trades them. He gets some value for those guys. But now, the Raiders might not get a whole lot from Michael Mayer. Of course, Zamir White's the other guy that was kind of put into this report. Zamir White, to me, has zero value, right? I don't even think a team would give up a 7th round pick for Zamir. And the reason why I say that is because, Zamir White being a running back, one, you don't really have a lot of value already. Two, he hasn't really done anything, right? He's had every opportunity to be a successful running back. He hasn't shown us anything. And, even if, even if there's some trait that some team might like, right? Like, hey, this guy is super explosive, right? Like, his stop-start quickness is crazy. It's the best in the NFL. A team might give you a 7th-round pick for that. If there's a running back you take in the 4th round, like Zamir White, and let's say he runs like a 4.25 40-yard dash, some team might pay you for that, but I don't really know what Zamir White has that some team will say, that's a trait we can kind of work with. The guy lacks vision. The guy lacks quickness and explosiveness and change of direction. And he has pretty good straight line speed. But again, straight line speed does not matter for a running back. It's the most overrated thing for a running back. To me, there's no value with Zamir White. I will say this, if this report is true and the Raiders are looking to move off of Zamir White, that could also mean the Raiders are going to bring in 2 or 3 new running backs, which we need, right? Our running backs are absolutely garbage, right? From last year, the guys that we had coming into this year, they are really, really, really bad. Alexander Madison will be a free agent. I don't think the Raiders bring him back. Amir Abdullah is a guy I could see coming back. Zamir White, I think, ends up getting cut. And I see Chip Kelly going out there and saying, hey, we need 2, maybe even 3 brand new running backs. Dylan Labe will be here because of the fact that he was drafted and he's under contract. But we need running backs that can actually get out there and play. And I think Labe will probably just play special teams from this point forward. I don't know if he has any sort of upside in his tape. We'll find out this year if he does. Truth be told, most running backs, first year, you can tell right away if they're good or not. Labe hasn't shown us much upside, but we'll see. We'll give him another year to kind of prove himself. Zamir White, I don't think he has any upside. We might draft some running backs, and the good thing with this draft is it's very, very deep, and there's a lot of really, really good running backs. There's probably 15 running backs in this class that are going to actually end up being, if not drafted, they'll make a team. 15 rookie running backs, a lot of running backs. I think there's going to be like 6, 7 running backs that are going to start like day one, right? If they're going to get like 10 carries from the first day of, first week of practice or first week of the season, they'll have 10 carries every game, right? I think there's going to be like 10 of those guys. This draft class is absolutely insane. And if I'm the Raiders, man, you got to take 2 running backs in this class. Imagine drafting, let's say it's Caleb Johnson in the 2nd round. And then let's say there's another guy in the 5th round, like a guy as good as someone like Bucky Brooks, right? The Buccaneers drafted Bucky Brooks in the 4th round. This year, you can find Bucky Brooks in the 6th round this year, right? 5th or 6th round. Like, that's how deep this class is. Miami has a great running back in Damian. I forget his last name. I think it's Martinez. Really, really good running back. He'll probably go in the 4th, 5th round. And, you got South Carolina, right? Sanders. Rocket Sanders. Phenomenal running back. He had an ACL injury, I think, 2 years ago. But he's a really, really good running back. He'd probably go in like the 6th, 7th round. I think he's going to be a good running back. And he's probably like the 15th or 15 to 20 range in terms of the running backs in this class. RJ Harvey literally reminds me of Josh Jacobs. Will probably be a 3rd round running back. Right? So the Raiders got to get 2 running backs. I think adding as many playmakers as possible. If you're a running back, you don't have to line up just as a running back. You can line up in the slot. You can line up out wide. Run those guys on drag routes, throw them the ball on screens, get them involved in multiple different ways. I think Chip Kelly will be able to kind of do that. So we'll see what ends up happening. I think it makes sense to get rid of both Michael Mayer and Zamir White. If Chip Kelly feels like these guys don't have the explosiveness that I need, Zamir White makes sense. I would hope that they can make Michael Mayer work. If not, it is what it is. Let me know what you guys think, man. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time with another video.